In this video, we're going to show you how to use your stored procedures in the Dashboard Fox Composer. So the very first thing we want to do is go into our app databases and make sure that we've enabled support for stored procedures for that particular data source. So I've got an app here, social media data, that actually has a couple of stored procedures that we could take advantage of. And by default, you're going to see that without this checkbox checked, you won't be able to access any of those stored procedures. So we don't want to just assume that if you have stored procedures on that particular data source, you want to make them available to users. So by default, that's turned off. If you do want to have the stored procedures that are available on this particular data source available, we want to check that. And we also want to make sure that we retype in the proper password, test that connection to make sure that password is correct, and then click the Save button to enable the advanced stored procedure functionality. Once that's configured, we can go into the Composer and start to use this. But one of the key things with stored procedures is it requires the advanced reports feature of Dashboard Fox. That's an included module, but generally it's not activated by default. So if this is a feature that you would want to use, go and look at the video on how to activate your advanced reports. In this case, I can see under my database management that I do have advanced reports enabled. The other thing is that if you do want a particular user to be able to view or build reports using advanced reports, you'll want to go under permissions and activate that for each individual user. So a lot of those reasons are security oriented. You can control who can run reports from stored procedures, who can see the data coming out of stored procedures. So if you do have any questions about advanced reports, we'll do another video that talks about that topic. In my environment, I do have that enabled already. So I'm going to go to the Composer, and you'll see that I have advanced reports listed as an app. That's one way to know if you have that activated or not. When I click on that, you'll see I now have two options: stored procedure and virtual app. We're going to pick stored procedure, and what we're going to see in our list here would be all of the databases that we have access to, which have stored procedures. So you'll see this is the app that we just registered and I activated stored procedures. If we had others, they would list as folders as well. When I expand this folder, I'm going to actually get the stored procedures that are available on that particular server. And if I expand that, these will be the fields that may be parameters that we need to apply criteria in order to run that stored procedure. This is a very simple one for example purposes. I'm just going to add this field in, this stored procedure. There's no parameters that I would need to configure on this case, and you'll see immediately it'll go out, run that stored procedure, and it'll bring me dynamically all of the columns associated with the data set that's returned from that stored procedure. You'll notice it's a little special. I don't have my options. I can't do things. This is just going to run the stored procedure and bring me back a data set. Now, I can save that just like I can any other data set. So I'll give this a name and a description, and I'll save it in a location in my private library as an example. So I can execute this. I can schedule it. I can put it on a dashboard. I can do all the things I want with it. But you'll notice because this is stored procedure data, I can't do options. I can't do formulas. I can't manipulate this data right now within the builder. That's where the other feature of the Composer comes in, the advanced reports feature, is now I can go back into my Composer. And just to show you that you could run this, let's look in documents really quickly. I'll go to my private library where I saved that report. There's your social data report. I'll click on that and you'll see it'll execute that. And based on the parameters, if I had placed parameters in that stored procedure, it'll execute in the context of those parameters. So I can always come in here and run this report just like a regular report. You'll see it says application type stored procedure. But let's say I want to now turn this data set that I received from that stored procedure into a map or into a visualization, or apply some criteria, run some formulas on it. I can do that, but I'm going to go back into my Composer and I'm going to leverage advanced reports. I'm going to use what has always existed in the product, which is the virtual app. This allows me to treat any individual report as a data source. So in this case, I'm going to pick the virtual app. I'm going to select my stored procedure report as my data source. And what that's going to do is actually execute that stored procedure, and it's going to turn all those columns into a dynamic report tree for me. And now I can proceed to build just like I normally would. So, for example, I'll bring in my date, I'll bring in my clicks count in this particular data set example. And you'll see now I can go in and add criteria and do all the things that I would normally do, such as show me everything from the uh, last year. I've got some older data, I think, in this particular example, and I'll count up. Let's add a formula and sum up my counts. So you'll notice that now I'm building a report off of that stored procedure just like I normally would, and I can pop that into KPI, and let's make this a large number format. So everything else flows as you would normally use, and I can save this. I can add in my hidden fields, put this into a dashboard with filters, and then behind the scenes, it's going to always execute that stored procedure as the data source for this underlying visualization. So really powerful, especially if you're using a lot of stored procedures and you're migrating from a platform such as Microsoft SSRS or other tools, or you have a lot of SQL queries that you want to convert into stored procedures. This provides you a quick and fast way to kind of migrate into a new modern application like Dashboard Fox, even without going into the app builder and starting to build your database schema. If you do have any questions, you can post those on support.dashboardfox.com. And if you have priority support, you can reach out to us at team@dashboardfox.com.